If you're new to this segment, this is our playoff tiers. This is not projections or predictions. To me, this is where things are right now when you look at the college football playoff landscape. So you got your playoff penthouse, teams we feel real good about. You got bubble central, teams that were like, I could see a path. I'm not saying they're out of it. I'm not saying they're necessarily right there in it either. And then you got the teams in the waiting line, all right? Trying to find a way in. Outside looking in right now, might need to pick up the pace a little bit if they want to make the college football playoff. And then we got the G5 party, which are the folks just having a good time right now in G5 country and have a chance to be in the college football playoff now with this expanded model. So let's start with the playoff penthouse. Again, not predictions, not like a numerical ranking. We do that on Sundays, so make sure you're subscribed right here so you don't miss it. But this is the teams that I feel pretty good about right now as we go into week 5 of the college football season as it pertains to the college football playoff. Texas, no Quinn Ewers, no problem against UL Monroe. Arch Manning just is out there dealing. They are the most complete team that I've seen to this point in the college football season in America to this point. All right. Also, if you were questioning if Quinn Ewers was going to be the guy long-term there, Steve Sarkisian did a lot leading into that game for Arch Manning, being the starter against UL Monroe to kind of turn that volume down. But it's very clear, too, by how his teammates talk about him and how Quinn Ewers is interacting on the sideline with those guys, getting them juiced up, being a lot more vocal than we've ever seen him be throughout the college career that he's had. Credit Steve Sarkisian for championing and empowering Quinn Ewers to be that vocal leader, and credit Quinn Ewers for stepping up to the plate and for taking on that leadership role in the massive way that he has. So Texas, what they did against Michigan, I think is still the best win of the college football season at this point. They're absolutely in the college football playoff penthouse. And like I said, multiple weeks now in a row, I mean, they just got their feet kicked up on the ottoman. It's a good vibe. College football sickos, make sure to subscribe right here to the On3 YouTube channel. If you don't like clickbait and don't like traffic for traffic's sake, this is your spot. It's college football, nothing but college football all year round. We appreciate y'all for being locked in and for being subscribed. All right, Georgia. Major opportunity this week. And I'm not really so curious about the roster for Georgia because I think you look at the guys on the sheet of paper that has the numbers and weights and heights, like a lot of 4- and 5-star guys, right? Like Georgia, if it's purely a beauty pageant, they're up there with anyone else in America, if not winning the whole darn thing based on the eye test. However, those teams that end up winning national championships under Kirby Smart got a little something extra under the hood. And we see that something extra under the hood when they have a letdown game. They had that letdown game against Kentucky, took a 1-point dub in Lexington, got a bye week. How do they bounce back? How do they respond? If they're anything like previous elite Kirby Smart teams, then they'll respond in a massive way this week in Tuscaloosa. And that's the next team we want to talk about, man. Hey, hand up. We missed Alabama last week when we went through this segment. They were on the graphic. They didn't make it to the show notes for whatever reason. But Alabama, they've been in the playoff penthouse, never left the playoff penthouse, regardless of what I have or haven't said about them on the show. I'm curious with them around the Kalen DeBoer factor here heading into this game. Because what we said in our prediction is absolutely true about previous Alabama teams under Nick Saban. Like they've always had this main event, big game just edge to them. Like you felt good if you were an Alabama Crimson Tide fan. Every single game you walked into, didn't matter what the spread was, even though usually you were favored. Didn't matter where it was. Didn't matter who you had healthy. You felt good with Nick Saban running the show. You were going to have more than a decent chance to win that football game. And for Kalen DeBoer, that was a big talking point when he took the Alabama job. Hey, is he cut out for life in the SEC? Is he cut out for the big stage, the bright lights? Different ball game now. And you look at the spring game being a great example of that. You have your A-Day, and it is a sold-out Bryant-Denny. Have your spring game at Washington, no shade to the Huskies, but like you might get a smattering of folks that are Washington football fans, and maybe you get a few families show up to the game to watch their kids. But like, you hear what I'm saying. Different beast. How does he handle this spot? Excited to watch. But Alabama, for the record here, Georgia and Bama, whoever loses that game does not mean they're automatically out of the playoff penthouse, just so we're on the same page there. So Alabama, definitely still in the playoff penthouse. Now, Ohio State, kind of quiet out there in Columbus. If you're a Buckeye fan, like that's exactly what you want to this point in the college football season. Haven't played anybody. No news is good news. And the game against Marshall, kind of a showcase for the Buckeyes. It was on Big Noon and played with their food a little bit. Hey, I'm cool with you playing with your food so long as you eventually eat it. You know what I'm saying? Like, got a little girl due here in November. That'll be my rule for her. It's my rule for the Buckeyes too. At some point in time now, it's going to be about Will Howard elevating Ohio State. And he hasn't had to just yet. But I think in those games against Oregon, against Michigan, in the college football playoff, you will look to him to be the difference. And Kyle McCord last year didn't have a bad stat line over the course of his season in Columbus. It was more so the big moments. Like, people talk a lot about Ohio State's defense over the course of the past couple of years. Last year, they were statistically really good. One of the top 10 defenses in America. Even against Michigan. People go back to the Michigan game and say, yeah, well, Michigan kind of bullied them. I mean, did they? Ohio State, go back to that last drive against Michigan defensively. If Michigan scores a touchdown, I mean, that game's out of reach. The Ohio State defense holds them to a field goal, gets the ball back for the offense with a minute flat to go. If your quarterback is able to elevate your offense, get you down the field, get you a touchdown, that's game over. And we're talking about Ohio State and probably Kyle McCord still being at Ohio State. And talk about them in a very different light, I think, going into this season. So it's about Will Howard. It will always be about Will Howard. And I cannot wait to see how he progresses when they play better competition here going forward. Miami, they're in the playoff penthouse. They're extra scary to me if I'm just a college football national title contender or in that discussion, because I think Miami is that. And that sounds a little bit funny to say out loud because of where Miami has been the last couple of years. But this is a group now that is a lot more versatile than they're being given credit for, because Cam Ward gets the headlines, and he's a guy that I think is very firmly in that Heisman Trophy discussion, if not the leader for it right now. Think about the aerial attack. They're a 55% pass team. You got Shannon Dawson, who's an air raid disciple. This is a tough football team. Like, defensively, I don't care who they have or haven't played. They are top 10 in yards allowed per a play. Yards allowed per a play, not a game, per a play. Physically up front, they have just been bullies when it comes to running the football. 6.2 yards a carry. Some of that is definitely based on the looks they get against their high-octane pass game, but like, they got a dude in Damian Martinez who runs behind his shoulder pads, and they got an offense, which is the head coach of Mario Cristobal, and the way that he gets down, the offensive line is going to be a point of emphasis for him. They've now built that, and they've been able to reap the rewards of that. So Miami, the styles they can play, so long as they don't have a letdown competitively, they're going to be able to, I think, compete with every single team in college football. Now, will they win the whole darn thing? We'll see, but they're absolutely, for me, in the playoff penthouse going into Week 5. Now, Ole Miss, people push back on Ole Miss and saying they haven't played anybody. I don't care. I really don't care. You play who's in front of you. And honestly, look at Oregon, and this is not to dunk on Oregon, but Oregon also hasn't really played anybody either. Boise State's probably the best, or in that conversation to be the best G5 team in America right now. Took them to a 3-point game. Still, it's a G5 team. Oregon hasn't really looked like Oregon until they played Oregon State. Like, it took a few weeks for them to get rolling. Ole Miss, they got a lot of transfers too. A lot of pieces they're trying to fit together too. And all they've done is absolutely roll. Now, I cannot wait for them to play Kentucky this week. Kentucky's an interesting test for them because of the way that they're going to, I think, try and take the air out of the football there, try and limit possessions for Jackson Dart. They are allowing right around 12-ish points a game. I think it might even be a little bit lower than that, given the stats continuing to update. They're a physical outfit as Kentucky. 60% run the football team. Okay, so how Ole Miss handles that now, that's been the talking point for us all offseason with Ole Miss. They're so much better up front. They've got better bodies on the D-line. Well, we're going to see. We're going to see against, like I said, a physical Kentucky outfit. This is going to test the pro mindset for Ole Miss here. Because you got Kentucky, but then it starts to really ramp up a little bit. At South Carolina, at LSU, you got a bye, and you got Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Georgia. So say what you want about Ole Miss right now. They're going to earn their keep if they end up finding their way into the college football playoff. Based on how they're humming offensively right now, like, I don't penalize them for not playing anybody. Over 600 yards of offense a game and allowing 3.5 yards of play defensively. That'll work. That'll work just fine. A new addition to the playoff penthouse here. How about Tennessee? Tennessee fans, you were saying, put us in the penthouse, put us in the penthouse, put us. You're there. You're 110% here, especially with how you showed up and showed out in Norman, Oklahoma with your quarterback's first road start. Showed up in a massive, massive way. And it was how you won that game too, right? Offensively, it was good. Josh Heupel pulled the reins back a little bit. 25 points, probably need more than that going forward to end up where you want to end up against the Bamas and the Georgias. But I think there's two thoughts for me. There is the overwhelmingly positive, and there's the sobering. I'm going to start with the sobering so we can end with the positive. If Oklahoma and Tennessee, in that game against Tennessee, if Oklahoma turns both those fumbles from Nico Iamaleava into points, the tune around the offense, the tune around Tennessee, I don't know if it changes drastically, but it's a little bit more flat. It's not quite as fired up as you were heading into this game. Because credit Tennessee's defense. Like, they showed up in a big way, like I already mentioned, and they were the reason why you won that football game. Now, I would say this, the positive, as I mentioned, is this is a team now, if they trend in the way that they can trend, have all the makings of winning the SEC. I'm not backing off that statement. They have the makings to win the SEC. Now, makings does not mean that's what you are right now. It means you have the ingredients. We'll say it again. Generational quarterback in Nico Iamaleava. I think you have a defensive line now that can compete with the Bamas and Georgias of the world. You have skill players that I think are ultimately what Josh Heupel needs from a quantity perspective to win his matchups. Like, this is a team that can actually lean on their defense now. You couldn't say that a couple years ago. You couldn't. 2022, it was a magical ride, but your defense had a lot of issues. You don't have those same issues this year, from what we can tell. So the makings and what they're going to be, two different things. But Tennessee, welcome to the penthouse, and we're glad to have you here. Enjoy your stay. It is not, rent is due every single week now, just so we're clear on that when it comes to Tennessee. Last team in the playoff penthouse for me, Utah. And we got a lot of pushback every week putting Utah in the penthouse. They're not this, they're not that. I just saw that team go to Stillwater, Oklahoma, one of the top teams in the Big 12. Salty, one of the top returning production teams in college football in Oklahoma State, without Cam Rising in the game. Won that game. So when Cam Rising gets back, and it's a funny phrase to say because we'll see when that eventually happens. You hope it's sooner rather than later. They're making it sound like he's not that far away for the folks in Salt Lake City, but to win that game in Stillwater with a backup quarterback told me everything I needed to know. Kansas State lost to BYU. We'll talk about them a little bit later. Utah, belt to behind as of right now for the rest of the Big 12. So Utah, for me, the team that I'm picking to win the Big 12, did at the beginning of the season, still picking them, and got a few more teams in the penthouse there that we'll unpack at the end of this segment a little bit later. So let's move out to Bubble Central. And this is where things get a little bit more spicy here, all right? Disclaimer, at the top of this thing, remember now, 12-team playoff, not the BCS, not the 4-team playoff. One loss does not change the outcome of your season to this point in the year, all right? So a perfect segue into that is USC. And people are going to push USC on the bubble. You just see what they lost to Michigan at. Michigan ran for almost 300 yards against them. I understand that. Bad loss. Doesn't mean USC isn't still a really freaking good team. We saw that against LSU. You go back and actually watch that game, USC, quite frankly, a couple of run fits away from winning that football game. Now, a couple of run fits is still a couple of run fits. That made the difference. But you cannot tell me that defense isn't improved. You also can't tell me the path isn't there. With Miller Moss and the ice water in his veins, man, here's the deal. You go 2-1 in these 3 games and win the games you're supposed to win around it. Penn State, Nebraska, Notre Dame. 2-1, you handle business 2-1, you're in the college football playoff as a 10-2 Big Ten team. And feel pretty confident in saying that. Also worth noting, Penn State, Nebraska, Notre Dame, all in the Coliseum. Okay? All in the Coliseum. And people say, well, that's not really home field advantage because we've seen the overhead shots of the Coliseum kind of not really being too full and just having a smattering of folks here and there. You've seen that when they're 7-5. Tell you what now, the folks in Los Angeles, they'll get dialed in if USC is in the college football playoff discussion. And that will be a home atmosphere, and that will be home field advantage for USC. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been to games where USC is dialed into the nth degree, and it's an experience, all right? So we'll leave that there. USC for us on the bubble as of right now. Now, Oregon, they were off a bye. I need to see it against UCLA now. Oregon, I need to see it. Looked great against Oregon State. I need them to look how they're supposed to look against the teams they're supposed to look a certain way against. And UCLA is one of those teams. So for Oregon now, is it a situation where the light bulb has come on and the bye week propels them even further and we're firing on all cylinders right now? Or is it a situation where, okay, we look good, take our foot off the gas, exhale, and then we go from there? You hope it's the first option there if you're an Oregon fan. Penn State, on the bubble for me. I keep asking for validating filters from them when it comes to who they play against. No shade and looking the way that you looked against Kent State. I mean, handle business, do what you do. Bowling Green also, that game being close, looked a lot better because of how they played Texas A&M. Bowling Green played them pretty close. But for Penn State, man, they got a really interesting 3-week stretch here. They got ranked Illinois coming to town, top 20 Illinois now, coming to Happy Valley. You got UCLA, and then you're at USC. So if you're a Penn State fan watching the show and saying, hey, put us up, hey, why are we on the bubble here, brother? We're undefeated. Coach Coltonecki got the ice cream offense working a certain way. I hear you. Handle business these next 3 weeks. You will very firmly be in the college football playoff penthouse. Mark my words. For Missouri, man, they're in the bubble again this week. I keep waiting for that light bulb moment out of them. The Vanderbilt game, it took them overtime, and Vandy might be pretty solid now. Needed a little extra surge a couple weeks ago to beat Boston College. I'm not down on either Boston College or Vanderbilt, but I am a little bit looking at Missouri and saying, okay, with what you have on that roster, with Luther Burden, with Brady Cook, with all the production back on offense, I need something to get excited about if I'm watching Missouri football. Something where I point at that product on the field and say, yep, that's a college football playoff team. Haven't seen that just yet. Haven't seen that. To be fair, I think there is something to Missouri potentially playing to the logo, which, I mean, hey, handle business against who you got to handle business against. And when you see the A&M logo, if you turn it on, great. When you see Alabama, you turn it on, great. However, playing to the logo to me is a lot like studying for a test the day before. You can do it only so often, and then at some point in time, that's going to bite you. Because to be clear now, Vanderbilt could have keyword beaten them. They didn't, still in the bubble, but we'll see what Missouri does here going forward. Michigan got a lot of pushback about having them waiting in line and having them in this playoff discussion. Michigan 10-2 will be in the college football playoff. Now, doing that requires them to split Oregon and Ohio State, so we'll see if that happens. Is what they did against USC sustainable? Throwing for 30-ish yards? No, it's not sustainable. However, I think the folks in that building in Ann Arbor understand that, and very clearly they're trying to find a Alex Orji offense 2.0 to try and build off what they did. But y'all, it's pretty clear who Michigan wants to be. It's always been clear. Double down, run the football. We're tougher than you. For that reason, we're going to beat you. And if that works the way they want it to work, they'll be in the college football playoff. The path, again, is still a little bit concerning for me if I'm a Michigan fan. But I think the Michigan fans understand that. I think they understand where they are right now when it comes to where this team is and how it's built. But I'm excited to see Michigan, man, because, again, one bad loss to Texas. Texas keeps on rolling, and Michigan, I'd be surprised if they weren't in this discussion for the college football playoff a little bit longer. One more team here, also elevating like Michigan from the waiting in line part of this tier up to the Bubble Central tier, and that's Clemson. We said this in a one-off video on the On3 YouTube channel. Clemson offensively for a while there, at least last year, felt like Firefest. And if you know the Firefest doc, then you understand what I'm saying here. It felt like, okay, you got a 5-star quarterback. You got a genius OC coming over from a national title contending team in TCU who elevated their quarterback, and we're going to be off the races here. We're going to score a lot of points. We're going to be explosive again, and then last year was what it was, and you're one of the worst teams in America when it comes to yards per pass, and you're like, hang on a second. We were told there was going to be a party. We show up here, and there's essentially tents for us here, and there's no food, and this is just a bad deal. That was the Firefest. However, though, seeing what they did against NC State, scoring almost 60 points again. They scored over 60 against App State. Seeing Cade Klubnik pushing the ball downfield with confidence, seeing him have 8.7 yards an attempt, you felt like Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption, spoiler, when he gets out of the prison, feels the rain on his skin for the first time. It's like, hallelujah. This is the Garrett Riley offense we signed up for. And if this continues offensively for Clemson, like that defense, I have no reservations about them. That defense is going to hold it down. If the offense is explosive, Clemson may very well be in the ACC championship. Now, Clemson, what's left for them is Louisville and then at Virginia Tech in back-to-back weeks. They finished with South Carolina, but no Miami and no Syracuse for the Tigers. Everyone left Clemson for dead after the Georgia game. We told you, we said, hey, it's game one. That's Georgia. Give it some time. Clemson, don't look now. They are very much alive when it comes to the college football playoff discussion. So that's Bubble Central. Let's take a trip out to the folks waiting in line right now for the college football playoff. And if you're waitlisted, it doesn't mean you can't get in. I got waitlisted for grad school. Had to have a conversation with the folks that are in power at that certain university. Found a way in. We're good. So if you're waitlisted, maybe you're like me. Maybe you find a way into school. Maybe you find your way into the college football playoff after all. For LSU, man, that's where they are right now. They have a chance to jump back up into this playoff discussion if they beat Ole Miss October 12th. Their path is vicious. We talked about it. The benefit for them, though, with what they have left, they get Ole Miss, Bama, and Oklahoma at home. All right, so you'd much rather play in Death Valley when it comes to playing those teams. We'll see what Oklahoma even is at that point in the year, but I'm just saying now, it's a tough path. It's not going to be easy by any stretch, but if you're LSU, continuing to put that offense together, your heart breaks losing Harold Perkins for the year. I mean, I absolutely hate that for all of college football, especially the folks in Baton Rouge, but we'll see what LSU is here going forward. I wouldn't count them out just yet, especially with how that USC loss could age if USC handles business. Now, Notre Dame, man, I'm worried about them. I have them waitlisted, but I'm concerned. I'm very concerned, especially with Louisville coming to town this week. Will the real Notre Dame please stand up? Please. Looked awesome against A&M. After week one, I was like, boom, check the box, get to the playoff penthouse. I feel great about Notre Dame, especially with their schedule the rest of the way. And then they lose to NIU. Then they're back up. They look great against Purdue, and then they're sloppy against Miami of Ohio. I'm very worried with Louisville coming to town. Very, very worried. Louisville's explosive. The Notre Dame offense has been very haphazard, been very unrhythmic. We'll see if they can put it together, but the inconsistency is what worried me about Riley Leonard coming to Notre Dame. It's what still worries me about the Fighting Irish moving into this week. I want to talk about two Big 12 teams here together. Oklahoma State and Kansas State are in the same boat to me. We've kind of swapped these two around with Bubble Central. Like, bottom line, Utah is that big dog in the Big 12 right now. Until proven otherwise, Utah just beat Oklahoma State. Kansas State, I was really high on, but they lost to BYU, and they lost in ugly fashion. You got certain fans of Kansas State talking about things they're going to do with different Mexican food items from your local Taco Bell establishments. However, doesn't mean they're out of it, but you're going to have to find your way to the Big 12 title game. Probably be to Utah, if I had to guess as of today, and that would be the path in. I do not see more than one Big 12 team making the college football playoff. So we'll see what happens there. Louisville, massive opportunity now. Welcome to waiting in line. You can move into the bubble territory if you beat Notre Dame. Now, Louisville's got a tough path, man. They got Miami, at Clemson, at Kentucky. But if you can split Miami and Clemson and then find yourself into the ACC title game and win the ACC, like, hey, you're in the dance there. You're in the dance. I think that's probably the path they have to go about it. But we'll see. I wouldn't be overwhelmingly shocked if a one-loss ACC, conference champ runner-up found their way in. But again, I wouldn't want to leave that to chance. For me, they're waiting in line this week. And then Illinois. A couple new additions to the waiting in line here between Louisville and Illinois. Don't look now. They're making some noise. Undefeated. Beat Nebraska at Nebraska on a national stage. They could get a whole lot more momentum if they go beat Penn State on the road. The Fighting Brett Bielemas. They need this one, and they also have Michigan and at Oregon still on the schedule. We'll see what happens there, but you just get this one. Worry about this one, and then we'll see where we are next week. Illinois, making it tough on the folks in Big Ten country. So that's who we have waiting in line. And then we'll check in on the folks in the G5 right now. A little G5 party going on. Ain't no party like a G5 party, man, because a G5 party do not stop. But it's been a little bit, I don't know if it's stopped at UNLV just yet, but gosh dang, man. The Matthew Sluka stuff throws you for a loop here. What do? You're still a top 25 team, still undefeated, still got 2 Power 4 conference wins to your name. Like, we'll see how much the eye test factors in there. I would say this, Matthew Sluka wasn't exactly lighting the world on fire for UNLV, so I don't think that would give them any issues should they go the rest of their season and win the Mountain West. They host Boise State late October, Friday night. That's going to be huge for pole position in the Mountain West. But UNLV, I think still the rep for the G5 right now, but we'll see what they do going forward here. Boise State probably feeling better about their chances now against UNLV moving into the post-Matthew Sluka era out there in Las Vegas. They host Washington State this weekend. Massive for all our sickos that watch this show. 10 Eastern kick. Has college football junkie written all over it. That'd be a massive. I know Washington State is technically, I think, an independent this year when you talk about what they or how you evaluate them for the college football playoff. But with the way they're cooking, would do a lot for Boise State in their resume. And again, the only loss Boise State has right now is a 3-point loss to a top 15, top 10, depending on how you want to look at them, Oregon team. James Madison put a thwacking on North Carolina, scored 70 points. James Madison, undefeated. Look at the Dukes now. Keep an eye on them. I'm just saying, they covered for us like a blanket last year. They're doing more than that right now when it comes to G5 territory. Then Liberty, still undefeated, business as usual. I look at them the same way this week as I did last week. You got Caden Salter, and you're going to be a force when it comes to the rest of your schedule as well. The game at App State is really the one that I'm watching, but Liberty, they may be undefeated. It's just a matter of how they look when they finish undefeated, if and when they finish undefeated. So, the playoff tiers for us. Again, this is the last time we're calling it playoff tiers. It'll be called something different next week. Got a lot of suggestions from y'all, but it is as follows. The playoff penthouse, you got Texas, Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Miami, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Utah. Do not expect the penthouse to be as full here over the course of the next couple of weeks. All right, it's still pretty packed, but that's the penthouse for you right now. Moving on down to Bubble Central, you got Oregon. Need to see more. Penn State, massive opportunity this week against Illinois. Missouri, Michigan, Clemson, and USC. USC's not dead now. Just because they lost to Michigan does not mean they are done. Keep an eye on the folks out there in Los Angeles. And then who's waitlisted right now is LSU, Notre Dame, both Oklahoma State and Kansas State out of the Big 12, Louisville and Illinois. And then for the G5 party, UNLV. I ain't hear no bell. Keep that music playing out there in Las Vegas. Probably not a problem for the folks out there in Las Vegas. Boise State, James Madison, and Liberty all hanging out in G5 territory.